Don't you know your heart's his throne? Can't you see it all around you? You're not alone. You're not alone. You don't have to fall down on your knees. And you don't have to cry yourself to sleep. And you don't have to worry anymore.
Wow. Okay, we can go home now. Oh, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Lissy, for more world-class music. Oh, outstanding, yeah. Thank you, God. As I've said many times, that's not just an affirmation that we say. It's a truth. We really know that we have beautiful world-class music here. Thank you for doing that for us. Yeah. Well, I'm going to thank all of you for being here, and I just feel blessed to be able to share with you something that I think many of you are already familiar with, and it's good. And sometimes, however, it's important for us to recognize that when we become familiar with something, it actually blocks us from really learning and growing. And so I'm going to invite you to really be open and receptive to being in what the Buddhists call a beginner's mind. How many of you have actually read this work before? Quite a few, yeah, okay. Just pretend you haven't read it before. Because the reality is, I've read it I don't know how many times, and every time I read it, it's like, wow, how did I miss that? Or, wow, that's a whole other way of understanding that I didn't get before. There's something about the way that Eric Butterworth is able to share and teach many of these spiritual principles that really has had a very profound and powerful effect on me in my life. And I know that it has for thousands and even millions of people. It is just a very powerful way of understanding and coming into an understanding of our inheritance as children of God, as expressions of the divine. And it's part of what we're working and learning and growing through. It's a way of really beginning to experience and know life in the fullness. Jesus said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Now, that's been interpreted other ways. It's been interpreted as Jesus saying, I came that they may have eternal life. But I'm going to suggest to you that the word that he used for eternal, that's been translated as eternal, is the word ptosis. And if you really look up the Greek meaning of the word ptosis, it really does mean abundance. It means absolute, amazing abundance, overflowing abundance. And so I really am convinced that what Jesus was trying to say to us is that we have the possibility and the ability to experience an overflowing of blessings in our lives. So as I began looking at and thinking about ways to share this, I started looking at, I like to always throw a little humor into what I'm doing at times, and I have a quirky sense of humor. Ask my wife, she'll tell you. Oh, really? And I came across, started looking at stories of things that were kind of funny about abundance. And what I discovered is there really are not a whole lot of funny stories about abundance. There's not an abundance of stories about abundance. What there are, there's a lot of funny stories about lack. And they're all pretty funny. And if you really think about it, lack is pretty funny. If you really get into the understanding that all these stories are about lack, we're laughing at ourselves because we believe that stuff. So I want to share with you a story. The story from Reader's Digest. Marcia Wood shared this in Reader's Digest. She said, my husband and I had just finished tucking our 4 young ones into bed one evening when they heard sobbing from the 3-year-old Eric. And so rushing to Eric's side, they found him crying hysterically. He had accidentally swallowed a penny and knew that he was going to die and just was inconsolable. And so his father, wanting to try and console him, decided he took a penny out of his pocket and palmed it in his hand and then magically pulled it out from behind the 3-year-old's ear. And the 3-year-old was just delighted and just ecstatic, and just so happy and so excited, and quickly grabbed the penny and popped it in his mouth and swallowed it. Daddy, do it again. I love this story. It's so funny and so comical, but one of the things that it shares with me, and it's something that I think that for us to look at, is that we have some ways of looking at seeing things in life that are not always necessarily mature, are they? And I think that's oftentimes true when it comes to the whole area of prosperity and abundance. We have been taught ways of looking and seeing things in the world that actually are an immature way of understanding. And part of this journey and this 7-week series that we're going to be working with is for helping all of us, including me, to actually begin to grow and to mature in our awareness and our way of looking and seeing at things, ourselves, life, spirit, the divine, and all of the activities that go on in our life. There was another story that I came across. A letter written in a very childish scrawl came into the post office, and it was addressed to God. A post employee, not knowing, of course, exactly what to do with the letter, opened it, and it said this: "Dear God, my name is Jimmy, and I'm 6 years old. My father is dead, and my mother is having a hard time raising me with my sister. Would you please send $500? And the postal employee was just very touched by this, and so he showed the letter to all of his co-workers, and they decided that they would raise some money among themselves, and they actually were able to raise $300. And so they raised the $300 and sent it to the young boy, and a few weeks later they got another letter, and the boy said, "God, thank you, but next time, would you please deliver the money directly to my home? If you send it through the post office, they deduct $200. Oh my. I think it's important for us to have fun with all of these things that we do, but I think there's some really valuable and important, significant awarenesses in terms of our consciousness and understanding in life. Eric Butterworth has such amazing ways of presenting these spiritual principles. I do not want in any way for you to think that I'm going to be able to give you all of the insights and the awarenesses that he himself is able to present to you. So I really would encourage you all to get this book and read along with us as we go along. And what you'll find is over the period of these next few weeks, you'll begin to see and experience little shifts in your own understanding and awareness of how you can experience even more of the blessings of Spirit, the blessings of God that are always there and available to us. I wanted to share with you, starting off, he starts off this work with a very powerful and profound statement. And it is a quote from Victor Hugo. And what he says is, "Greater than the thread of mighty armies is an idea whose time has come." Greater than the tread, let me say it correctly, the greater than the tread of mighty armies is an idea whose time has come. And he goes on to say that perhaps you are here today listening to this talk or reading this book because this idea is the right time for you to be able to open your awareness to a whole nother possibility of life and living in the blessings of the divine, of abundance in life. A whole nother level, perhaps. Many of you here are actually quite prosperous, aren't you? And you see that, yeah, absolutely. And many are here who are actually having struggles. It's true, isn't it? And I'm going to suggest to you that there are different ways of working with these ideas and principles, and there are ways that you can move from, and part of our work is to move into different consciousness, as we call it, or different energies in life. I know I love the Abraham Hicks work we've been studying, and they really talk more about these things in terms of energy. And we're going to talk more about that. One of the things that Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, taught all of his students was that you and I are consistently being provided for and supplied for, and one of the ways that happens is through what he called divine substance. Now, divine substance is a really interesting concept and awareness, and it's one of the things that really helps us to begin to move into an understanding of how we are able to be blessed and prospered in life. And if we can really begin to immerse ourselves in a knowing of that idea, not just intellectually, but really practicing an awareness of this thing that we call divine substance, it will actually help to shift energies and awarenesses and consciousness in such a way that we are being able to see all of the great possibilities for us in our lives. Divine substance really, in some ways, has been described in so many different ways. And one of the things I remember early on when I was studying prosperity, and one of my first prosperity teachers was a very well-known prosperity teacher named Edwin Gaines. How many of you are familiar with Edwin Gaines? Yeah, just a dynamic, powerful, wonderful teacher. And one of the examples that she gave is that this divine substance is it's like a Play-Doh almost. It's like cosmic Play-Doh, and everything is basically formed out of this divine substance. Everything that we see and experience, everything out here in the world, is formed out of something. And we are all a part of this understanding that we are immersed in something greater than ourselves. And I like to think about it in terms of this idea of energy that the Abraham Hicks talks about. And I see it more as a divine creative energy. You know, physics tells us that everything is basically energy. That even our physical bodies, the materials that we're sitting on, the chairs that we're sitting on. Oh, I have to tell you a little funny story about that. Went to Chris Pfeiffer's concert last night. Yes, one of our wonderful world-class musicians that plays for us occasionally. And one of the things he said was, he thanked us for being there, and he says, I want to tell you folks that these guys celebrate everything. They celebrate the chair that you sit in. And I'm going, well, yeah, that's true, because otherwise we'd be sitting on the floor. And so so he paid you guys a great compliment. We celebrate everything. So one of the things to be aware of about that is that we celebrate this understanding that there is a divine presence in and through all of creation, and in and through all of our life, and in and through all of our experiences. And one of the things that helps us to move into an awareness of the abundance in life is to begin to recognize that that abundance doesn't stop where our nose begins. Let me say that again, maybe a little differently. It doesn't stop, and it is not something out there. Are you hearing what I'm saying? That abundance is, and that divine substance is every bit a part of who and what you are. You are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine. And part of our shifting and moving into an awareness of the abundance in life is begin to recognize and understand that divine abundance and substance is everywhere present, including in you. You are an experience and an expression of divine abundance. Do you realize that? Have you ever seen or thought about yourself in that way? I'm going to invite you to begin looking at and recognizing that is an essence of who and what you are. You're created in the image and after the likeness of the divine. So therefore, what does God create everything out of? If there's only one presence and one power in the universe, and that is one of the things that we talk about and teach in Unity, it says in the Bible that God is the beginning, and God is the beginning and the end. God is all things, and out of all things, everything was made. So what did God make us out of if He didn't make us out of God stuff? One of my musical friends says we're how does he say it? Big blobs of God. We're God blobs. We're created in the image and after the likeness of that which is also continually creating us. And we are in the place of being able to actively and consciously participate in the creation in our experiences in our lives and our world. If we begin to really understand and get that, then we begin to move into an awareness of what Eric Butterworth calls affluence. Now, affluence can mean, so I want you to hear this, affluence can mean your own private jet. Affluence can mean having a great big house up on the hill, right? It can mean having, lots of a brand new car, lots of money. It can mean those things. But that's not the essence of what affluence really means, is it? It also can mean simply being present to the good that you experience in any given moment, right? Because the word affluence means actually to be in the flow. That's what it means to be affluent. You are in the flow. And when we are in the flow of that blessing, of that life, we find that all kinds of amazing good comes into our experiences. So we're not just talking about the wonderful, beautiful houses up on the hill, but that can happen. And that's certainly something that, for some people, that really helps them to be expressing who and what they are and have come here to be. Sometimes it means having the corporate jet. I don't have a problem with anybody that wants a corporate jet or a personal jet. That's fine. I have no problem with that. The reason why I have no problem with that is because I know that does not in any way subtract from the divine abundance that is available to everyone in this world and in this universe. If there is an abundance of everything everywhere, there's an abundance of divine substance, if we can really get that knowing that there is an abundance of divine substance. Now don't get me wrong, there's not necessarily an abundance of private jets. There's not an abundance of private jets. I'm sure more can be built, right? If that's what you truly desire in your heart and you really think that's what you have to have, well, you're missing something. But if you get that, you'll find out that you're missing something. You follow what I'm saying? So part of the understanding is to begin to recognize that there is an abundance in life. There's an abundance of good. There's an abundance of this divine supply. There's never a lack in any way of divine ideas. And one of the things that Emily Cady says is, and this is a great quote. Let me pull this quote up. She says, God is not a being with qualities or attributes, but God is the good, and I'm going to paraphrase, God is the good itself, coming into expression as life, love, power, and wisdom. And what this says is that God is not, I'm going to say this, some of you this may surprise and shock, it may not. God is not loving. I'm going to pause on that a second. What this says is God is not loving because God is the allness of love. Do you see what the difference in what's being said here? And part of the shift that we are moving into is to begin to recognize that we need to shift our awareness and understanding of this God out there who is loving, who is somehow going to give us abundance, to the understanding that we are living and moving and having our being, as Paul says, in that essence that is abundance. I live and move and have my being in divine abundance. You live and move and have your being in absolute abundance. One of the things that Eric talks about is that it's kind of like, an analogy is that it's like you live like a fish lives in the ocean. You live in the divine. Let me ask you this. If all the fish were out of the ocean, would it still be ocean?
Yes.
You put all the fish back in the ocean, is it still ocean?
Yes.
There's no separation between the fish in the ocean and the ocean, is there? There's no separation between you and the divine. You might think about it also in terms of a wave. If you have an ocean or a body of water that's completely flat and there are no waves, it's still water, right? Yeah. But if the waves come up, is it still water? You are like a wave in the ocean. You're just as much a part of that divine as when it's just flat. Does that make sense? You are an experience and expression of that divine presence and that divine substance. And a part of our understanding is being able to get into that practice of beginning to see and move from an idea or a belief system that says that God, our source, the creative power, the good, is somehow going to come to us out there. Now let me clarify this. One of the things that we have a tendency to do is to think and look for something out here to change in order for us to experience abundance and prosperity, right? I do it. We all have done it. We still have this understanding, this idea, this belief system that somehow our good is going to come to us from something out there. There's nothing wrong with being open to experiencing the good that does come out there, but it's important for us to recognize that ultimately every good that we experience in our life comes to us not from something out there, but comes through our own energy and awareness and consciousness. Because we are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine, we are created as creative beings. And we are creating right now. We're in the process of creating right now. And we have an option and an opportunity to really look at and evaluate what it is that we are participating in, right? What am I participating in? What am I participating in creating right now in my life? And you'll know this by how you are focusing and directing your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings. In Acts chapter 17, 24 through 25 and 27, 28, Paul says this: "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all men and women life and breath and everything. Yet he is not far from each of one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being." In him we live, and in the divine we live and move and have our being. And so part of coming into this understanding of absolute abundance and prosperity is to begin to really reflect on and spend some time and some energy in building up an awareness and a focus on that abundance. How often do you sit and really reflect on and think about abundance? How many times do you sit and reflect on lack? I mean, just be honest. It doesn't affect me whether you do it or not, one way or the other, does it? Does it affect you? Does it affect the person sitting next to you? Of course it does. It affects all of us because we're all a part of this knowing. We're all a part of this understanding that we are created in the image and after the likeness of God, which means that we are creative beings. And we're in the process of creating right now, and we're creating based upon what we're focusing our energy on. Eric says, life is lived from the within to the without. Life is lived from the within to the without. And so part of our learning and growing in this process is to begin to pay attention to what's going on in the within. He goes on to say prosperity is spiritual well-being. I love this. And this is exactly the same thing that the Abraham Hicks work says. Well-being. Well-being. What does that say and mean to you? And he goes on to say it's spiritual well-being. And I would say that it's actually spiritual, mental, emotional, physical well-being. But it begins with the spiritual, doesn't it? It begins with the getting into an awareness and understanding and even an experience and a feeling that we are in that place of well-being right here and now. And the more we can practice this, the more we can experience and we will become magnets for drawing even more well-being into our experience. So let me kind of bring this down to a personal story. I have not always experienced the amazing and wonderful affluence that I'm experiencing in this life right now, all of my life. I feel actually amazingly blessed in my life right now. I have this beautiful congregation that I dearly love. I've got a lovely wife that I dearly love. I've got this wonderful, absolutely comfortable home that just really meets all of our needs. I just know that all of my real needs are being provided for in so many ways. And this is not to brag, I want you to understand. This is to help you to understand that I have been in places where I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from. I have been in places where I really did not know where I was going to be living. I honestly did not know. I didn't have work, didn't have an income, had lots of debt. I've been right on the very verge of being out on the street. I was blessed enough to not have to be on the street because I had friends who loved me and were not willing to let me go out on the street, but also loved me enough to not let me stay in their place forever. If you know what I mean. And set a time limit on how long I could be there. And I, at the time, was really feeling not too great about that, but now I look back on it, it was one of the most loving things they could have done for me. And the reason why it was the most loving thing they could have done for me is because they knew something in me that I wasn't seeing in myself. You get it? And the thing that really made a difference and began to turn things around for me, and I want you to know this wasn't sometime before I came into Unity. This is while I was in Unity. I was actually a Unity minister at the time. So it wasn't that I, all of a sudden came into Unity and all of a sudden I knew how to do all of this stuff. I'm still in process, folks. All of us are still in process. We're still learning how to experience those blessings. But the thing that really began to happen for me is when I began to really reread this work and began to understand and immerse myself in this real knowing that I was completely surrounded by absolute amazing abundance. Even though I knew that I had all of these debts that I needed to pay, I really didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, I really didn't know where I was going to be living, I began to look at what I did know. And I began to focus my thinking on what I did have. And I began to look at that I think at the time, I remember I had maybe $100 in the bank, and it wasn't nearly enough to cover all the things that I needed to pay for at the time. And I began to give thanks for the $100 I had. And some of you might say, well, wow, $100, I'd love to have $100 right now. If you've got $2 right now, begin to focus on and give thanks for the $2. If you have 2 cents right now, begin to focus on and give thanks for the 2 cents. Because it's in the energy of focusing on having that you will begin to create more of that experience of having. This is true not only in terms of money. Money is actually a very valuable tool for us to understand prosperity, but it's not prosperity, is it? If you really get what prosperity is, you'll find that money is one of the most valuable tools for you to be able to understand and experience and learn prosperity. But it's not prosperity itself. It is a channel and a way for you to experience more blessings in your life. It's a good one. It works. It's valuable. It's worthwhile. But it is not what really creates a prosperity consciousness. If you begin to think that you have to have more money in order to have a prosperity consciousness, you are subverting the creative process. That make sense? And so when you begin to understand yourself and see yourself in a way that is prosperous, then you'll find that other things will begin coming to you. This is what Jesus was talking about when he said, seek ye first the kingdom. You seek first the energy and the consciousness of good, of blessing, of feeling worthwhile, of feeling valued, of feeling of well-being in your life. And so for myself, when I began to really focus on giving thanks for all that I did have, doors began to open that I just didn't even have a clue about. I had just had someone contact me out of the blue and saying, I've got this opportunity that I wondered if you'd like to be a part of. And I went and tried it out, and sure enough, it was something I really enjoyed. Was able to do it for several months and was able to really begin to pay some of my bills, begin to do some things. No, it wasn't my life work, but it was a great opportunity for me at the time, and I learned some very significant things in doing it. And it led me and kept me moving in a direction that really began to move me back into an awareness of the real abundance that I live in my life. And it also began to manifest in physical ways as well. The money started showing up. The opportunities started showing up. the chances to make a difference and to give of myself in some way began to show up. And I said yes to them. And I've been blessed by those opportunities. And I keep trying and listening for what are those opportunities for me to show up and manifest and express those divine qualities of spirit that are mine to give and mine to share. So there's a couple of things, a couple of key points I want us to get from this week's lesson. And we're going to move into a meditation time, and I'm going to lead you in a meditation that really is about reflecting on and seeing yourself immersed in this understanding and this energy and this experience of absolute abundance. Because the more we reflect on those, the more we build up that awareness, the more we begin to draw into our lives experiences that will reflect that. And the other thing is, I want us to get an awareness that I can't do that for you. You can't do that for me. Julie can't do it for me, although sometimes I try to get her to. You know, it's just...
She could if she wanted.
Well, no, she really can't. My partner can't. Your partner can't. Nobody here in your life, in this world, will ever give you a prosperity consciousness. In many ways, it's like Eric Butterworth talks about it this way. When you walk into a room and there's nobody else in the room, it's dark, you can sit there in the dark or you can flip a switch. Only you can flip the switch. Only you can begin to develop this understanding and experience of abundance in your life. Only you can begin to make those shifts and those changes. Only you can begin to direct and focus your awareness on the blessings that are available already in your life. Only you can begin to shift that. Eric says your fortune begins with you. Now, don't get me wrong. We can experience blessings from others in our lives. Julie blesses me every day. And sometimes that's in a loving way. Right? Works both ways, right? Sometimes I'm a blessing to her, and sometimes that's in a loving way. But every day we have the opportunity to flip that switch, to begin to look at and focus on the good that we want to see and experience in our lives, the blessings that we already have, and to begin to allow those to expand. And as we allow those to expand, we expand our opportunity and our allowing of the blessings and the flow of spirit to come into our lives in loving and positive ways. Right? So my prayer for you this week is for you to immerse yourself consistently throughout your days and your weeks with this absolute knowing that you are not just surrounded and filled with the presence of the divine, but your very essence is an outflowing of absolute good. And if you will begin to practice that, you'll begin to see ways that that's true for you. And you'll begin to experience other opportunities where you can see that and reflect that and live in that knowing. And it's amazing how many of the physical world things begin to line up for you when you're in that energy and that vibration and that consciousness. So let's move into our meditation time. Jesus said, I'm here so that they may have life and have it abundantly. And so I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Breathe in deeply. I invite you to move into that comfortable place in you and move into a place where you are open and receptive. Not just to experiencing and receiving good, but being a channel, an instrument, a radiant expression of divine good. Close your eyes and begin to go within, and as you breathe in and out, invite you to let your heart be open, feeling an openness, feeling and allowing. An allowing of being, an allowing of blessing. And in your mind's eye, I invite you to now count the number of air molecules that come in and out of your lungs as you breathe. You're breathing in and out billions, perhaps trillions of molecules of air with each breath. And not one of them ask if you deserve it. And as you breathe in and out, notice and feel that abundance. As you relax and breathe in and out, I invite you to become aware of how many rays of light are hitting you right now. Can you count them? There are perhaps billions and trillions of rays of light, even those that you can't even see, hitting us right now. There are vibrations of energy that are flowing in and through every part of being. Take some time to reflect on that abundance. Feel yourself immersed in those rays of light. And now imagine yourself as one of those rays of light, or perhaps even billions of those rays of light. Feel and see yourself radiating as good, as a blessing, as light, as love, as peace, as those divine qualities of spirit. In your mind's eye now, imagine the leaves on a tree. And count how many leaves are on that tree that you are holding in your imagination. And now count how many leaves are on all of the trees in Austin, Texas. And count how many leaves are on all of the trees in this country, around the world. Feel that energy and that awareness of absolute abundance. And now in your mind, think of an apple. And think of an apple tree. And notice how many seeds are in that apple. And think about how many apple trees and how many apples might come from even one seed. Imagine and see that seed planted in the ground, growing an amazing apple tree, and look and count how many apples are on that tree. And now notice how many seeds are in each of those apples, and see each one of those seeds planted in the ground. And imagine how many trees sprout up from those apples. And on and on. Feel what it feels like to immerse yourself in the awareness of the amazing abundance of all nature. Count the grains of sand on a beach. And now count the grains of sand on all of the beaches throughout the world, or even perhaps throughout the universe. And this is only a minute way for us to understand and experience the amazing abundance that is always available to us and through us from our source, from Spirit, the abundance of the universe. And let yourself now give thanks that you are affluent in the flow of divine abundance here, right now. Take a nice deep breath. Begin to let your awareness move back into the present time and place. Take another nice deep breath. And let yourself give thanks for that knowing and that feeling and that energy of abundance building and growing and expanding in your heart and in your mind and in all aspects of your being. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And so it is.